Not all superheroes wear capes. Some wear wellies. Wellies.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the James Conway Experience. Now, many of you mightn't be aware of it, but the NGO sector in Ireland is an industry all of its own. Some figures would reflect that there are at least 32,000 NGOs operating within Ireland. That's 1,000 for each county if you go through it. I don't know how they operate, and I don't think sending them an email is going to make it. We're not going to find out from that. So we're joined by a very unique man. We're going to refer to him as James Joseph this evening. He has been to 97 countries, operating for NGOs all over the world and the United Nations and a couple of governmental agencies and that. He's going to blow the lid off where you think your money is going.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, Jim.
How are you doing, lads? How you doing, James? Great to be here. Just let me kick off by saying 2 weeks ago we had the best time of our lives up at your place at your festival. A really great time. Great to see Irish people and others together.
Yeah. Having
a great time. Music, bit of fun, bit of education. So it was a really nice time.
Yeah.
And the gang I came with all had a wonderful time.
Well, thank you very much. That's the Homesteaders Holy it was. And a massive event for, what's the word for it, Darren? What do you call it when people are meeting each other and stuff like that? Networking. That's the one. That'll tell you how much I've worked for corporates. I don't know what the word is. But yeah, it was brilliant. And now we've met each other a few occasions before that. You're involved with an organisation, the Green Hearts. You're a connector for them, bringing people together. It's all about self-sufficiency. Now, we will be doing a podcast with Joan from the Green Hearts and Sharon, I think. But do you want to start off just by a little bit? Because I think it's a wonderful organisation.
I won't say too much about it because you have the girls coming next week or whenever soon. But basically, the idea is that there's a group called the Green Hearts that connects people all over Ireland together. And they look at, it's really just about connecting people that have similar interests. And it's not a formal organisation and there's no membership or anything like that. But it's to get people in each county to talk to each other. And they look at education, farming, agriculture, organic farming, health, issues that people are really interested in today. Given what we've gone through the last few years, there's a kind of a resurgence in interest in these kind of topics. Yeah. So it's really just to get people to know who's beside them and in the same counties. So myself and my friend Poddy there are connectors for Roscommon.
Yeah.
And each other county has another connector. So the girls will inform people about that and they can let them know. But it's well worth getting in touch with them after. Just to find out what's going on in your area, because it's very, very positive stuff.
It is, yeah.
And it's like going back to the old ways in Ireland too, where people have metals and things where they help each other out.
Yeah.
And it's a good strategy for business too. If you're running some small business and you're doing something that benefits society, you can connect with other people that can value add. And support your business.
Well, since I met the girls, I've been to a tree planting in Leitrim, festival in Tyrone.
Right.
A good group from the Green Hearts was at the Homesteaders Holy. I found it really, really good. But back to yourself, how did you get into this line of work? You were a tradesman beforehand, presumably.
That's right. Yeah, I served my time. I'm a toolmaker by trade, and I then went through college and became an industrial engineer. And I was quite bored. I'd spent 6 months in Japan for one of my first employers and I came back to Ireland and set up a big Japanese multinational here with 5 other people. And after a couple of years, I just got really bored. And instead of being the company, I became somebody who worked for the company. So I became very disillusioned with the whole, big corporate kind of thing. So I volunteered to go to Africa initially to teach. And I was planning to go as a tradesman just for something different to do. And I was prepared to go. And then the agency, which is part of the Irish government, was called APSO, Agency for Personnel Services Overseas. They called me and said, would you be interested in going to Honduras? Now, I'll be honest, I didn't know where Honduras was, but it was in Central America and Spanish-speaking country. And I just said, yeah, I'll give it a go. And it was to do with rebuilding the country after Hurricane Mitch. So it was a big hurricane that hit Central America, and that was in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, I think, about 62,000 people died in Honduras and El Salvador. And so they sent me over there, and I was tasked with, it was a 2-year contract, and it was more or less voluntary, with Irish Aid paying salary, just a stipend to live for the 2 years, helping with rent and stuff like that. So I was out in the middle of a small village near the border with Guatemala, and my job was to rebuild a rice processing plant. So I had a couple of apprentices and didn't speak any Spanish when I arrived. I'm not sure how much better my Spanish is now either. But, so it was in at the deep end. So I ended up in this village with no proper roads and middle of nowhere, literally. And ended up, I suppose, prospering. I managed to get donations from Ireland, tractors and trailers and ploughs and stuff. And luckily, I was in contact with Fifes, the banana company that most of you will know from Ireland. Fifes is one of the biggest importers of fruit and vegetables in Europe, in fact. And the managing director was a guy I knew, so they agreed to ship things out to Honduras that were donated by Irish farmers. And at one stage I was on the farming news on RTE as well, which a long time ago, but the response was overwhelming.
That part of Central America, though, they were known as banana republics for a reason. So there was a lot of torturous things that happened with bananas.
That's right, yeah. There was a big scandals there, but I mean, the whole political climate in Central America is more or less, it's overshadowed by the Americans. They did a lot of regime changes in all of Central America and South America too. But you're right, Honduras was the original banana republic, and the corruption is just incredible. It's, nothing is above board. But I did 2 years there, rebuilt the rice processing plant, and we ended up employing about 1,000 people because it was the knock-on effect was the farmers were now able to grow rice, process rice, and value add to the rice, and then sell it within our own cooperative. So it was a success story that still goes today. It's still operating. That was 1999.
Is there a tinge, though, that when you're operating in a country like that, like I spoke to one man before who was doing what he perceived as aid work in Mexico, and then he says, I realised halfway through that I was basically building a facility for the cartel to take over. Is there an element of you that sees all this corruption and when I'm gone off the scene here, there's going to be someone to take over this? And
I don't think it hasn't happened with this particular project, but it has happened in different countries I've been in. I worked after with an Irish NGO. I won't name them, but I wouldn't be a big fan, excuse me, of NGOs now, knowing what I know. But I will caveat that with amazing people work for NGOs, fantastic people. I think it's very often the leadership or the management level that get the funding and the donations they don't have the best of intent.
If you were to pluck a figure out of the air, donation point, we'll say, is Ireland. Girl with bucket receives €100, and I'm picking €100 because it makes it a nice figure to multiply or divide. How much of that €100 is actually making its way to where it's really, really needed?
I would be surprised, and I don't have figures, but be surprised if even 2% of
Is it that bad?
it really, really is. And I can talk you through what happens, certainly with UN funding. This is going to make me very unpopular, maybe with some people, but this is the facts as I see them.
Yeah, and you've been on the ground.
I did a response in Bangladesh for the Rohingya crisis. I think most of us remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote a proposal for the response plan for Bangladesh, and it was $980 million. And it wasn't accepted fully, but I think we got 550 million for the response. And then I realized that what happens is the funding is approved for the region or for the country you're in. Then the UN headquarters in New York take a huge chunk because they have an admin fee. You know, how can we run our business without funds? So they take a huge chunk of the funding that's given by unilateral donations from countries all over the world. Then the New York office gets their bit, then Geneva gets some, which is the head of the UN as well.
So just go through that again. So there's two swipes taken out of it already now.
2 swipes already. Geneva will get some, the UN headquarters will get some. And it's a fair sized chunk. I don't know what percentage, but it's a massive chunk. Now, then what happens is the regional office. So in Bangladesh, in the case of Bangladesh, it might be Thailand, the regional office, which is not that close, but it's regional. So Thailand will then get, the UN will get funds in Thailand. And then the Thai office will then send funds to the UN head office in Dhaka in Bangladesh. And then the UN head office in Dhaka will then send funds to the regional office in Kutupalong, which is about 40 minutes from the refugee camp with over 1 million people. And then what happens then is the Dhaka office gives the money to the regional. Then the regional will do what's called a PCA. It's a project cooperation agreement with NGOs like Oxfam, Gold, Concern, Save the Children, whoever is on the ground. And there's thousands of NGOs, some local ones, some international. And then the NGO will send money back to their head office, Oxford for Oxfam, perhaps in England, and then a regional office in Dhaka as well. But then they will formulate programs of what they will deliver to the refugees or IDPs, which are internally displaced people. If there's a different type of conflict, you could be displaced from one part of a country to another. So you're internally displaced. But for all intents and purposes, it's like being a refugee, but in your own country. So they will take the money from that, and then they will hire fundies who are local tradesmen. So, for example, we talked about latrines earlier.
Yeah.
You might need 1,000 latrines. Oxfam will contribute or say, we will build 1,000 latrines all over this huge, big, vast space called Kutupalong. And you will have other NGOs doing the same thing. But their contract with the UN is to build 1,000. So then they hire fundies, local tradesmen, and then the fundies hire labourers. So you can see how the funds get depleted, and then suddenly you have 10 latrines instead of 1,000 because there isn't enough funding left. Now, I'm exaggerating a bit, maybe it's not 10, but you can see where the money gets siphoned off at different levels, and it's admin, and I'll do the inverted commas, admin charges.
So from your time on the ground,
yeah,
you reckon a realistic figure is approximately 2% of what's initially makes its way to the ground, if you get me.
People can argue the figures, but I'm categorically saying a huge amount of funding that people put into these things never sees the light of day.
This would lead me to believe there was organisations in this country, trusts and that, where they done a collection, tradesmen, flew to the country themselves, went to the hardware and put up the house.
Sure.
The UN wasn't in favour of it.
No.
And the only reason that I could see that they weren't in favour of it was they weren't doing the whole admin thing. The admin thing was, we will fly there with our tools. We will go to the hardware, buy our hardware, and put up the house. The UN couldn't possibly do that because they have to take all these swipes of money out of it for very fancy buildings in New York and Geneva and all of that.
Yeah. There's hundreds of UN agencies. We know about the big ones: UNICEF, UNHCR, WFP, World Food Programme, WHO, the World Health Organization. But there's literally hundreds of UN agencies that most people have never heard of. And they're working away in the background doing all sorts of things. And not all of them are good. In fact, most of them are probably not good.
Well, let me put this to you then. The girl, we go back to the girl with the bucket, collecting the money. And let's say on her bucket, it says, help the Rohingya or that. And perhaps you're from that part of the world and you say, oh, well, I want to help them. I'm from that part of the world. Is that categorically going to them? Or could you well be funding another agency within the UN?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Now, first of all of these people who are affectionately known in the circles we work in as chuggers, charity muggers, because they mug you on the street and appeal to your sense of, sympathy or empathy. And now they're all hired. They get paid, from what I understand anyway, and somebody can correct me, but the people who collect money on the street are usually students. And they get paid a percentage just to collect money on behalf of the NGOs. Now, I will repeat that the NGOs are not bad people, most of them. But a lot of the programs they do are dictated, unfortunately, by higher entities like the UN. As I said, the UN will sign a PCA agreement, Project Cooperation Agreement, and you have to work within their guidelines. So the NGOs who are autonomous at different levels, they can operate autonomously. But once they sign cooperation agreements, they're under the remit of the UN and must follow their criteria and their objectives and goals. And they're not allowed to think out of the box. In some cases, we're talking about millions of dollars that these NGOs will get from UN funding, like the 550 million proposal that I put in for funding. That's divvied out into all the organizations. So there isn't a massive percentage that's left, I believe, and from what I've witnessed. And I think, just to use an example here, on a more, in the States, there are people that are building homeless shelters, small little caravan type shelters on wheels.
Yes.
And they're distributing these to homeless people. So they're solving a huge problem of homelessness. But the local councils or corporations are coming in and bulldozing them or confiscating these, because for the same reason, they can't be seen to let ordinary people resolve the problem by doing direct implementation. So it's a case of channeling all the funding through the UN or through the government and keep the citizen out of it. And I use the word citizen in the way that most people understand it.
Yeah.
So it's where we are at the moment. 32,000 you mentioned NGOs. I think there are fabulous people that work for NGOs, but I would ask all of them to take a long, hard look
at what they're supporting,
what they're doing.
Yeah,
because some of them have nefarious intent. There's one NGO that was caught in Colombia during the Venezuelan crisis, and that was only in 2018. But they had been caught in another country child trafficking. And I worked alongside them in Colombia and had never heard of them. But when I looked into it, I wondered who they were. It was clear that they'd been involved in trafficking in other countries. So I had no reason to doubt their intent in Colombia either, because you have a serious migration unaccounted for going from one jurisdiction like Venezuela into Colombia through a land bridge or a border, and nobody is documenting who's there and who's going missing. As far as they're concerned, they're just lost in the interior. But a lot of people are actually trafficked.
How bad is the infiltration of criminal elements into NGOs in places like Africa? Because as I said, you don't get into the name and shame thing, but I was fully aware in a couple countries in Africa, a lot of the food was not making it to the people. A lot of the food was being siphoned off and being sold on the black market.
We could have a very, very long discussion on this.
Yeah.
But I know of certain countries I've been in. I witnessed it myself where the food aid is recirculated. So it's basically given it to somebody and then taken away again.
Yes.
I even knew of a shipment that was put on a ferry, shipped across the river, distributed in theory, but not actually distributed, and then shipped back over and sent again several times. And all done under videos to show that it was arriving.
Yeah.
But nobody videotaped it going back again.
Yeah.
And be reloaded on the same ship again. And that's not unusual. And I could cite my own personal experiences with stuff like water trucking, where they deliver half a water truck and they're supposed to deliver a full one, but they deliver half to two different locations and charge for full trucks. But they bribe the person who's receiving the water and documenting that it's arrived. So they pay people money, cash, very small amounts,
yes,
to basically lie that they've received the aid or the water supply. And even though those same people are the victims of the lack of water, they look at the money and say, well, I can do something with this money.
I can buy a bottle of water.
I can buy a bottle of water.
Yeah.
It's incredible, but the money is the big swayer of influence. It's incredible, but there are so many stories of aid going missing and been misappropriated. And I'm jumping around a lot, but in Sudan, we had Bashir, the president of Sudan. He's now deceased. He was wanted by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. You have the UN still today, I believe, reporting about 200,000 dead when it was over 1 million people that were murdered in a genocide in Darfur. But Bashir was publicly denouncing the Janjaweed, who are the people murdering the Far tribe in Darfur. And he is saying we're out trying to hunt them down with the soldiers. But when I was there, I would go for tea in a little, sitting on a rock, outside a little shop where they sold tea. And the Janjaweed would have their camels tied up to a bush and an army technical right beside them with a big machine gun on the back, sitting on a stone somewhere near me, having chai together. So they're hunting down people, on camels, but they're not really, they're drinking chai with them. So it's all a fabrication, and it's to do with the media portraying this fake image of, resistance and government trying to deal with terrorism or these radicals in their country. It's all a stage. It's all an act.
A fiddle.
It's a fiddle, yeah. Because they would have received a lot of aid as well. And Darfur was a massive draw on aid from the global humanitarian response. I was there with an NGO, but that was in 2004, I think. I've been so many places, I can't remember exactly. So there was a lot of aid distribution there, but I actually witnessed people getting shot, farmers tending tomatoes in the field, and the army would drive by and shoot them. A bit like what's happening in Gaza today.
Because there's a a man I do watch, he's massively good at the permaculture, and that Jeff Lawton from Australia that you've probably heard of.
Mm.
He went to North Africa
Mm.
and basically showed the people with a spade and a pick how to make ridges that when the wind came across, it didn't blow the sand directly.
Sure.
And he was greening a good area of it.
Mm.
And I thought to myself, well, surely the UN will get behind that. No, because it was working. And all of a sudden, you didn't need aid. You didn't need the whole memorandum behind it.
Mm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but are we in a place now where there are very, very wealthy individuals in the Western world who never, ever want to see a situation where Africa is anything but a basket case?
I couldn't put it better myself. I would say it's the opposite, but this is a very old plan. It's not colonialism, it's globalism, but globalism is not a new phenomenon. This has been a long-term plan for a long time. And Africa, just if listeners don't know much about Africa, Africa is the richest continent
Yes.
in the world.
Yeah.
All of the resources they have in Africa are very valuable. Not just land. The land is incredibly fertile in most countries in Africa. They have their own oil, they have gold, they have diamonds, they have silver, they have all the rare metals that go into our telephones and in Congo and places. So Africa is being exploited as a continent, but it has been for a long time. Now, it's clever what they've done, though, because they've bought the leadership of African countries.
Mm-hmm.
They've paid them personally hundreds of millions to allow access via the central banks, of course. If there's a central bank in your country, it's captured, simple as. And that may make me a target saying that, but I think anyone with half a brain now knows this.
I'll join you being a target.
Yeah,
I'm aware of it.
Yeah, so Africa is not a poor place. It's just oppressed by their own leadership at the behest of the globalists who run the banks, and they get personal wealth. I mean, I'll give you a good example. In Kenya, after 50 years, the CIA released documents. They do disclosure. Well, the 50-year-old documents were released a couple of years ago that clearly showed that the ivory trade in Kenya and Tanzania was run by a lady called Mama Ngina, who is actually the mother of the president, a former president of Kenya. She was the wife of Jomo Kenyatta, the first president of Kenya when they got independence. So in the 1950s, the CIA knew she was behind the ivory trade. But of course, they weren't interested. It wasn't their business. But fast forward, their son was born. They called him Uhuru, which means freedom in Swahili. And Uhuru Kenyatta is married to a lady called Margaret, and she campaigns against the slaughter of elephants and rhino.
Oh, very good.
But his mum is still alive, and she's the one behind the ivory trade.
Oh.
So you see, this is what happens. These guys own the banks, they own hotels, they own millions of acres of land that was seized from the Kenyans when they were granted independence from the British.
Can I ask you a question then? It'll be a fairly controversial one. South Africa and what was formerly Rhodesia, very nasty, how would you say, systems from a humanitarian standpoint.
Sure.
It was apartheid, all the rest of it. Were the global elite worried about apartheid, or were they worried about that there was two states where they weren't able to completely and utterly take everything from the state without much interference?
I think there's a bit of a misnomer there. Cecil Rhodes was, you've heard of Cecil Rhodesia. He was a globalist. He was a Zionist. And he was put there and funded by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. to create the state, and they extracted diamonds and
Yes.
gold from South Africa and Rhodesia at the time. So it was part of the globalist agenda to create apartheid and keep it controlled. So a lot of the South Africans that were sent there to do apartheid worked for the state, for the Zionists. So there isn't a distinction there really. And without going into all the detail, which I don't know all the details, but it was one and the same thing. So the globalists went into every country and basically funded either the local leaders by giving them massive amounts of money, or put in regimes that were controlling the local population. And, they were probably white Europeans, or in the case of South Africa, they were Boers, they're Dutch settlers and whatever.
Yeah.
So, but they're there a long time. So it was all part of the same plan to divide and conquer countries. And there's a great story about Rwanda. We all heard about the Rwandan genocide.
Yes, yeah.
That's in our lifetime. Now, the Rwandans used to be there's a lot of different tribes, but King Leopold of Belgium, and from what I understand, Belgium's landlocked, but they had an accord with the Dutch to access the sea. So Belgium actually had a substantial navy. They were Flemish, and they had a substantial navy, and they went and conquered a lot of countries like the Congo, and they were in Rwanda as well. So Leopold recognized his country was tiny and Rwanda is very big. This is a cut and paste for a lot of different countries. So he created another tribe in Rwanda and gave one tribe administrative authority over the others. So, and that way he managed to control the people within their own country by using native people. But they literally went to families and said, you have a big nose, you're a Hutu, you don't, you're a Tutsi. And two brothers born from the same parents. And they were like, what the hell is this? But within two generations, they believed with the propaganda that they were, different tribe. And they separated them and put them in different schools and, as I said, gave them administrative power over the others. So then you fast forward to the Rwandan genocide. The PR machine went into overdrive with calling them cockroaches, in the radio, and creating hatred and suspicion of each other. And then they shipped 40-foot containers full of machetes from China. And so this was all planned and orchestrated. And if you haven't read Dallaire's book, Shake Hands with the Devil, it's very, very well worth a read. And it's about the UN, or the UN peacekeeping leader, the head of the peacekeeping force in Rwanda, who was a Canadian guy. And he saw what was happening and alerted Ban Ki-moon at the time, the UN Secretary General. And he said, look, there's shit going down here. We need to do something. I need more troops. And Ban Ki-moon's response was, don't worry about it. It'll be okay. And he was at his wit's end. He's written the book since, but he requested more troops, and he requested a mandate to be able to engage these people, the Interahamwe, who were creating the genocide. And they had loaded weapons in the UN, but they were not allowed to discharge the weapons. So they literally stood there watching the Interahamwe grab women by the hair with machetes and do horrible things to them. And they weren't allowed to engage. And since then, there's another book called Shooting Dogs. And it's about how the UN soldiers were shooting the dogs that were eating the dead bodies of people. They were starving. But they were allowed to shoot the dogs, but not shoot the people who were creating the dead bodies. And it's a horrible image.
I've listened to some of the radio programs that went out the weeks before, but they're, what's the word for it? When someone dubs over it. It's outrageous. That, do you know, fair enough, freedom of speech or that, but this is just directly saying these people are the cause of all of your problems, and we need to kill every one of them. Well, it was that blatant, if you get me. Do you know?
Well, this I think there's lessons to be learned here, but I don't think I'm not going to be all doom and gloom. I think people knowing about this stuff and the reality of what happened can prevent it happening. But that was a genocide that was orchestrated in advance and planned, and it was a depopulation agenda. Now they're still using the same methodology in some countries, Mindanao in the Philippines and a few other places. There's been genocides, and now Gaza. It's about depopulation.
Is there an essence, Jim, and it's very hypothetical, you know, has the United Nations facilitated multiple genocides over decades in nations? Could they have the ability to do it on a global scale? From the lessons that have been learned?
I would say yes, and knowing what I know now, I now believe that the UN was set up to defraud the people of the world. It was set up in 1947, and it was set up by the same globalists, Zionists, that are in control of all our banking systems, our media, radio, television, you know, everything that we hear and see around us, advertising, it's owned by the same people. And it happens to be the same people that set up the United Nations in 1947 and subsequently set up the State of Israel in 47, 48. And I don't distinguish between, you see, they have a long plan, and I'm sure you've heard of the Kalergi plan.
Mm-hmm.
Kalergi was a diplomat. He was half Japanese, I understand, but he wrote the blueprint of what is now, well, he was the grandfather of the European Union, or the EEC at the time, and they used his ideas. And if you read the Kalergi plan today, you will see that he talked about destabilization of Europe and how to kill culture. And he mentioned about bringing black and brown people, infiltrating Europe with black and brown people who share no cultural similarities to the ethnic populations. Now, he was a Zionist as well, and he was part of this plan. And now it's really amazing to read it and transpose that template onto today and what's happening today. It's incredible because he was so on the money. And he's on the money because the plan is being followed.
Well, you see, this is you know what people describe sometimes as conspiracy theory and stuff like that. Unfortunately, if a lot of the time, if it's just time, and then people start to go, well, this isn't conspiracy. This is really documenting what's happening. Like when I was 14 or 15, I read Ted Kaczynski's manifesto or that. And at the time, I thought, well, some of that is far-fetched enough. And then you get into the realms of AI. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, no, he's on the money here. We really needed to stop this a long time ago. And, you know, he does a critique of the left in it that was way ahead of its time. Because for me, when I was in my teenage years of that, the left to me was kind of Labour and, you know, we should share things a bit more and all that. It kind of seemed a bit wishy-washy to me, or that. He went far further than that, and he went, no, these are not pleasant. These are not pleasant. They depict themselves as pleasant, but they want everything you have and total control. And I just look at that now and I'm like, that manifesto was frightening. Look, I'm not going to defend him. He'd done some very stupid things in his lifetime. But as far as what he had written out, it was on the money. And the Kalergi plan, I don't think that man's predicting it. I don't think he's predicting it. I think what someone has said is, that's a really good plan. Let's implement it. Do you know?
What's interesting, James, is when we, you know, It's like somebody said, if you take your clothes off and run across the room, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
We can't unsee. But now we're understanding that Alice in Wonderland was written by globalists or Zionists, where Wizard of Oz was written by a Freemason, with an agenda. All of these movies, and people will think I'm mad, but if you read back on George Orwell, 1984, all of these books and movies were doing what's called disclosure, where they're telling us in advance, here's the plan. You see, there's a thing about karma, and it's about transferring or shifting the blame, which is a fantastic documentary if any of you look for it on YouTube. But it's about how the people doing all the bad things to us transfer the blame from them to us because we acquiesce, we agree to do it because we were warned and we took no action to defend ourselves.
Can I hit you with a frightening one?
Go for it.
Monsters, Inc., a child's film where the energy source is the scream and agony of children, and then they figure out for the new age, oh no, we just need joy and laughter and stuff like that. I often think of that and I'm like, oh God, that was not, I don't think that was as innocent a film as it was depicted to be. Do you know?
Yeah, it seems that, you see, we're back to the whole control mechanism. The globalists, Zionists, whatever you want to call them, doesn't matter, Illuminati, they own the media. They control the media, and you will never really see anything that is truthful in the media unless it suits their agenda. And by that, I mean the disclosure thing, the karma thing, shifting the blame. They believe that if they tell you they're going to do something and you don't defend yourself, then the karma has been transferred to you.
That's similar.
It's your fault.
Yeah, that's similar to a few people who've told me it's what's the word? Guilty by ignorance. The Masons are big on it.
Yeah,
they're big on it. Yeah. If I give you all of the information and I make it blatantly obvious and you still do the wrong thing, it's your own fault.
That's it. Yeah. A lot of them, they've been telling us for, I don't know, over 100 years.
What's your experience with the WHO? Have you seen them operate around the world?
Yeah.
What they're like on the ground? Are they to be trusted?
No. Simple answer, no. WHO were set up to defraud, in my opinion. And I don't want solicitors' letters coming to me now, but WHO, I'd say, has little merit because you just have to look back in the history. There's all the vaccination campaigns that were done. I mean, a big turning point for me was I worked for UNICEF, and I won't mention which country, but there was a story going around at the time when in Afghanistan, UNICEF were vaccinating children against polio, young girls specifically, and a lot of the girls died from vaccination, and 200,000 number of girls were made infertile. Now, these are 5 and 6 year old girls, and they'd be of age now to bear children, but I'm sure they can't. But it was a depopulation agenda to reduce population. Next generation won't happen. But the story was that the Taliban killed some UNICEF staff members that were vaccinating the children. Now, the staff may not have known that the vaccines were tainted or bad, which I believe all vaccines are bad, by the way. But they may not have known that, but the headline was something like humanitarian aid workers murdered by terrorists. And there was no nod to the fact that they just basically wiped out a future generation and vaccinated 200,000 young girls with polio that wasn't necessary. So this has been going on around the world. So WHO, I don't think, have any redeeming merits. I mean, even a lot of the standards, if you critique them, a lot of people quote WHO standards for all sorts of things like water supply and pathogens and whatever. But if you critique them really well, you realize that the standards are wrong. And there's all sorts of examples, things like cholesterol. They've been lying to us for years about levels of cholesterol, telling us it's bad for us. if you have more than X amount, you're in jeopardy. Don't eat butter and don't eat this and don't eat that. All those things are incorrect. Cholesterol can be as high as 300. Barbara O'Neill talks about this, wonderful woman. But they've lied to us about the thresholds, blood pressure, cholesterol, and many other things that are natural to get us to conform to Big Pharma. And the WHO pushes this narrative globally. And you know what they're doing now with the treaty. And so, no, I don't think they have any place in this world, really. Some great staff who are oblivious, I'm sure. They're admin staff or they work in some other aspect. But the policy level for the WHO is captured. And you only have to look at Tedros, the boss of the WHO. He's actually a terrorist. He's been indicted for terrorism, and he's responsible for a genocide in his own country. He's not a good person, and yet he holds the highest office in the biggest, I suppose, UN agency that exists today in terms of power. Anyway,
is there, in your opinion, a requirement at all for an international organisation overseeing aid and responses? Can that not be done at a local level? Especially now that we have things like GoFundMe, crowdfunding platforms, even people with the ability to themselves to, like when the storm was on in this area, we as a local group were able to get people up here. We were able to get bits and pieces done in a locality. Why is there a requirement for an international agency? Is there a requirement for an international agency?
We can cut this short and say no. There is no requirement. It's the Hegelian dialectic. Problem, reaction, solution. They create the problems. The globalists go in and destabilize countries. Central America, Africa, even Ireland. They destabilize the countries and then they sell them the solution. That's what they're about to do here. They're giving us such a bad government in this country. They're not even a legitimate government, but the government are so bad that we'll reject them all parties, and then the one world, new world order will come in on their big white horse to save us. That's the objective. That's the plan. And they're doing that in Germany, Spain, France, Italy, Ireland, England. Collapse the economy to the point where nobody has faith in the political system.
Yes.
And then they'll want the savior to come.
Yeah.
Because everybody needs help. So the answer is we don't need the UN, because the same people who created the UN are the same ones that fund the genocides, who go into all these countries and destabilize them and rape them from their resources. Like, you'll find the big companies own the sub companies that take the minerals from Africa. And I don't know if you're following Burkina Faso.
Yes, I like
Traore, yeah. We all like him. I'd say his days are numbered. I hope I'm wrong, but...
Well, I hope you're wrong, because there could be a good consignment of tractors heading to Burkina Faso. So they're good.
But
I hope to help him out.
Yeah. That would be wonderful, because his own bodyguard was offered a huge sum of money to take him out. Yeah. And he refused. But he could be one of these anomalies in Africa, like Gaddafi and Musa in Egypt and a few others, that they stood up against the globalists and they were summarily executed. Even Saddam Hussein, who I won't claim was a good guy, but he was controlling his country, and it was better under him than it is now.
Well, if you look across the board from Gaddafi, all of those countries from the Arab Spring onwards, I don't think anyone can defend the position that they're better now.
No.
I don't know one country where you can say, oh yeah, that's better. I really don't.
Well, I think the answer to your question was we don't need the UN. And NGOs exist because there's a vacuum there. The UN create a problem and then sell the solution. And I think it's that simple. I think we overcomplicate this too many discussions about corruption of leaders and blah, blah, blah. The same people bribe the leaders to do the corruption or to facilitate the corruption to destabilize their countries, while other big multinationals extract the minerals, gold, oil, whatever, for Europe and for the States.
Is it the case that it's not the people or the leaders as per se, it's the system that is entirely wrong? Like from its inception, if you have a global organization, that is always going to lend itself into global control at some stage. Do you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the Green Hearts type thing comes into it, which is local.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I've had this conversation with someone that says, "Oh, we need to take our country back," and I've said, "Have you tried taking your parish back?" It's a good starting point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know?
Yeah.
I'm just going to finish. We'll finish for the first YouTube.
Sure.
You can follow us then to Patreon. We'll get into other stuff, but no, it's fine because I want to get into the Patreon. The final one, Jim. You've told us it's not needed. You're an interesting man with music and stuff like that. So do you want to finish off? Because is music your kind of escapism to get away from all of this?
Yeah, I suppose it would be. I've always been, this word that's bandied around, awake. I've always been aware of things not being quite right, but it was kind of an escape thing. So I got interested in music, particularly vinyl, collecting vinyl when I was about 13. So
you were ahead of the curve on that.
Well, not so much. No,
it's making a big comeback now.
Well, making a comeback, but it was still there when I started collecting. I'm an old guy now, so it's come full circle exactly, and I just never left it.
Yeah.
But I collect. So all my trips around the world, I'd go digging for vinyl in warehouses with rat poo everywhere and whatever, stuff that's thrown on the floor. And I've amassed a pretty good collection and interesting stuff. But I kind of play, you see my t-shirt here, I'm the founder of this thing called Nairobi Soul Club.
It was in Kenya,
It was in Kenya, yeah, in Nairobi. But I was just a bit bored with the music, and African music is great, but they're going down the road of the hip-hop stuff, and it's not my thing. So I decided to create some nights where you could listen to some old school soul music and funk, bit of James Brown and stuff. And then some guys heard me play, and one of them was from Scotland, and he lived there, and he kind of came in on board. And then a French guy, Lionel, came on board and joined me playing kind of a different genre, but still fantastic music. And the three of us started gigging around doing festivals and stuff. So it was an amazing time. And we just go to a place and people would show up from everywhere. And some afternoon sessions where you're just out in the sun, having a few beers and a bit of a barbecue.
Any of the countries you were over there, was the country music big in it? Because I was in a couple and the country music was a big thing.
Do you know what? It's funny because Nairobi is all hip hop and, a bit of funk and soul and neo soul. But when you go to the coast, it's all country music.
Yeah.
It's all country and western.
Yeah.
And it's a bizarre thing because you have all these black people dancing to country and western music,
it's very
or listening to it, and it's like, wow,
yeah,
it's just so bizarre.
Well, like I'm a fan of country music, and I never thought you'd see like a woman doing Patsy Cline, who's as far from Patsy Cline as there was. Jim, an absolute pleasure. Thanks for being with us, and everyone can follow us onto the Patreon, and Spotify, and we'll get Jim's socials if he has any or that, and you can reach out to him that way. So thanks very much.
Good stuff. No, you're most welcome. Thanks for having me, and
thanks everyone.
Take care.